Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Write Adventure, our ongoing live stream where we are creating a completely custom campaign in real time so that you can see all the thoughts, ideas, questions, and considerations that go into this process using my technique. I'm RJ Kerr, I'm your host as always, and today we are going to be working on our original monster that we're currently calling the Baurakara, which is a unique sort of monster that has a memory wiping ability to it. And so we're fleshing that out. We worked on that last time for a 100th episode, and now we're going to be working on it again today. But before we begin, if you are new to the channel or you haven't caught up on some of the previous videos, let me give you a quick summary on where we are and what we're doing so that you're not lost. So, as I said, we're creating a completely custom campaign, and that includes its own domain of dread. We are using a story circle structure for this campaign arc, not as like a hard and flat, like a hard and fast, rigid plot line, but to give us something to work with, to give us a place from which to deviate, right? So we have already started filling out a fair amount of that. We have figured out how our characters enter into this domain of dread through a portal that opens up on the Blood Moon. We figured out what kinds of motivations would draw them into this world. We have figured out where they land in a shanty town that we're calling Darkport, which sits on the edge of an inland sea. We have figured out this inland sea is a big part of this domain of dread, that it was once the basin of a thriving metropolis that's now fallen into ruin and flooded. We have also decided this domain comes with its own Dreadlord, as you would expect. But this Dreadlord is we're calling Ovander, and he's an elemental villain of some kind, and we're still figuring out exactly how he fits into the overall adventure. Now, we've also done the very first adventure for our characters, where they are kidnapped and briefly enslaved and have to escape their captors. And in doing so, they learn about the existence of a long lost artifact and realize that this artifact is probably their best bet for escaping with their lives. And so now they're working on a part of the campaign where they're getting proactive, where they are going to look for this artifact. And so we are using a node structure style here to give a lot of player agency, but to also give us as DMs a little bit of structure to work with. So we're not having to come up with literally everything on the fly. Node structure is effectively it's a series of clues that are laid out that allow the characters to find one and follow it to another node, or as I prefer to call them, an investigative scene, which has more clues. And they can find some of those, all of those, none of those. The point is, there's so many clues in the world, they're bound to find something. And that allows them to kind of follow the breadcrumbs all the way to the eventual solution in a number of different ways. So there's no railroading on this. It gives them a lot of routes to success that they can take, all with their different challenges and different consequences. We've put a lot of those nodes into place already because they can be pretty much anything. We've got one that's a very simple social encounter, one that's a far more complex social encounter with lots of complications. We've got one that's a basic 5-room dungeon, another that is a heist style adventure. And from one of these, from our simple social encounter with a retired monster hunter, we now have a side quest that's blossomed out of that. And we're working on that side quest. And that side quest involves a very unique, rather terrifying creature that that wipes the memories of all those who are no longer looking at it unless they possess a piece of the monster's body. So let me go ahead and share my screen here, and we will get rocking and rolling. Before I do, please remember this is an interactive stream. So as you have thoughts, comments, ideas, questions, concerns, or anything else you want to chat about in the chat, jump in there. I'd love to hear from you guys. You come up with some amazing ideas. So much creativity out there. So don't be shy. Let's hear your thoughts. All right. So as I said, we're working on our monster here. And as I've kind of talked about before, when we've built other custom monsters or other custom creatures, I don't like to start with the let's say the hard elements, right? Like and by that I mean like the firm things, the math in it, right? I don't like to start with armor class and hit points and the ability scores or any of that kind of stuff, because that's going to be mathematically calculated via a chart that we're going to use. use for a lot of that kind of stuff to make it balanced based off of the challenge rating. Instead, I prefer to get a feel for the monster and what its special abilities are, what things make it unique, by filling out its special traits, by starting to hash out what kinds of attacks it does, not worrying about damage again, that kind of thing. But thematically, what it might have, if it's going to have legendary actions, may write a description of the creature if it's pretty unique, and we'll eventually want to do that for this monster. But working on all those sort of soft elements first, I think gives me a much better idea of what I'm looking for in this creature, and that makes it easier to map out the more mathy, the more arithmetic focused issues or pieces there, I should say. All right, so with that in mind, let's go ahead and get working on a continuation of some of our special features here. So we've got a couple ones we fleshed out the memory affected. So we've got a mechanic for how this how this forgetfulness will work actually in combat, and frankly out of combat too. We have come up with this idea of this memory marked, and it's in its basic form. We haven't fleshed this out yet, but its basic form, it's a modification of Hunter's Mark, where the monster instinctively prioritizes targets that remember it. Like it's compelled to sort of remain a secret as far as it's concerned. We've noted that this is a clone creature, that it's really not one creature, it's a series of clones, and that when one of the clones dies, another clone immediately activates. The new clone has all the abilities and memories of the previous clone, but it also evolves. It gains a new ability every time one of the new clones is activated. And so we're working on building out some of those various upgrades, those new abilities as we go. And we've come up with a few ideas. This is a river-based sort of creature. It has some amphibian elements to it. It has some crustacean elements to it. It's got some, insectoid kind of elements to it. And so we're using that as a little bit of a guide as we move through here. But there is the question of how many evolutions do we need? How many new abilities do we need to chart out? Because one thing that we want to consider is the number of times the characters are going to interact with this monster, going to have to face it, going to have to fight it. We know that there's going to be at least 4 confrontations, right? There's one at the beginning, their first encounter when they hunt it down originally. There is one when they go back to a village that was having some problems with this monster, unbeknownst to them, and the monster reappears and comes back, and they have to face it again, thus revealing that there's more than one of these creatures. And the third time, after the village, thinking that this is some sort of divine punishment or divine retribution, offers the characters up as sacrifice, and characters have to fight their way out of that and are once again engaged with this monster. And then when they go to the creature's lair to finish it off once and for all and find all of the eggs or clone jars or whatever we thematically end up doing with this, and have to destroy all of it. Which means that we could very much end up in a situation where the characters are fighting one of these monsters over and over and over again. As they kill one, a new egg opens up, and as they, cut that one down, another egg opens up, and what have you. Now, we don't want to end up in a situation where we're having to come up with hundreds of these new traits, but we want to have enough that there is a pretty significant uptick in difficulty to force the characters to really kind of stay on their toes and do what they can to mitigate this evolution. So we had a couple ideas as we went through here. We had some talks about poison that starts off in a basic form and then eventually upgrades to something more deadly, more difficult. And I think that's a good place to. I think that gives us, I think, 1 to 2 of these abilities. So let's hash that out. And I'm going to be typing one-handed here for a little while because I've got Gizmo with me. All right. So basic poison, our first level of poison here. Um, you know, I think it's tempting to just immediately kind of have the thing evolve through its whole poison phases, and then start getting things like ink fog and what have you. Because true name is another feature, not an evolution. But I think it would be I think it'll keep the players on their toes a little bit more if we kind of alternate um, some of these abilities. So it has this basic poison, and then it gets something like ink fog, and then it gets the poison upgrade, and then it gets something else, and so on. So I'm thinking that we probably need 6 or 7 evolutions. I would think, um, just to kind of again make it seem like this thing is getting tougher and tougher every time they kill it, forcing the characters to think of a way to deal with all of these eggs or all these clone jars as one, as opposed to trying to just hack and slash their way through it, making them reconsider their objective. So let's see here. Chat here. Fantasy Animal Vegan gets front row seat. Awesome. Hey, good to see you here, man. Good to have you. And then you said 7 sounds great. All right, cool. So let's base this off 7. Let's come up with some ideas. So I'm just gonna say TB. We're gonna say trait, and we'll just add 5 more of those. Period, and we'll figure out what they are. Hey, Mr. Mex, good to have you here. Okay. TBD. Doing this one-handed is far more cumbersome, but that's okay. Sacrifices we make for our pets, right? All right, so that's 3 of them, 4 of them, 5. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 traits that we can get figured out here. Hey, Gizmo. Mr. Mex said hi. Yeah, I see that you're very enthusiastic about that. All right. So let's see here. One of those will be, I guess we'll call it advanced poison is an initial name for it. We'll come up with something cooler than that. And we'll figure out where we want that to fall. Poison. And yeah, there's a D in there, of course. All right. So, the thing that we talked about last time with poison, right, is that there's a temptation to make poison just do damage all the time. But again, that messes with the CR here potentially, especially as we evolve that poison, right? Like, so if it gets tougher and tougher as we go, it's going to change the CR of this creature, which is going to throw off the balance for this side quest, right? So instead, I think we're going to go along with something like making the first poison deliver a poison condition. And then we'll have whatever the final tier of this poison is deliver something like the paralyzed condition, or something along those lines. Um, so yeah, so and then we got to figure out how the delivery system on that works, right? Like, so is it through through the claw attacks? We've talked about some of that here at the claw attack. We've talked about becoming poisoned. Is there other ways that might work? Looks like uh, Brooke Mullen says poisonous skin would be an interesting evolution. Yes, I agree. That absolutely would. That's a cool idea. Or poor monk just poisoning themselves. Well, that actually adds an interesting element to this, right? That, like, things that you can do that don't nerf character abilities, but require them to rethink their typical tactics, keep fights interesting, right? Because if all they have to do is go in and do the same thing they always do over and over and over again, well, they got that down pat, that becomes rote. But if, for example, the monk can't go in and throw hands because they got poisoned skin, well, the monk's got to come up with something else to do then. And this is a cool opportunity for us to evolve some of those things that really force the characters to change tactics. So let's see. We'll call this toxic skin. Um, we call it toxic skin. We might even have an evolution of that becomes something like uh, toxic shroud or something. Or it's not just if you touch the skin; it's if you get within a range of this creature. Um, oh, I said skin again. And I'm just spitballing here. We may decide that we don't want that. We may come up with other stuff. This is pure brainstorming at this point. Mr. Rex says, would the DC save to restrain from the tongue attack go up with each new version, possibly paralyzing at some point? Um, Again, I wouldn't change the DC because that's a really good question, but I wouldn't change the DC simply because that also messes with the CR, with the challenge rating for the creature. So if we were going to have the characters um, level up over the course of this side quest, we might want to come up with a few different CR versions of this. If we were going to have, if we wanted to create a situation where this creature gets, effectively, unbeatable at a certain point, and becomes, you know, becomes a goes from being a regular encounter to a deadly encounter. Well, then yeah, we might want to create a couple different CR versions of this. Um, we I don't think that for what we're building here right now, though, we need to do that. We might change our mind. We'll see what we continue to create. But so as long as we're working on one CR, wouldn't change the DCs. If we're working on multiple CRs, absolutely, it would change the DCs. Um, Paralyzation at some point, I think, is a good idea. The question is whether that comes from toxin, like poisons or what have you, or whether that comes from something in the tongue lash. We've already got a grappled restrained condition with the tongue lash, but that's in its basic form. It doesn't mean we can't add to that. And we've got poison coming from the claws. Again, basic form doesn't mean we can't add to that. So we might want to work the paralyzation in there. It may be one of the evolutions. Um, let's see here. Let's say, um, let's just put that down as tongue trait for now. And then we'll say paralyze. All right, question mark. We talked before about having some resistances that it gains. And we might change that with immunities. Important note when you're working with resistances and immunities. Once you have more than 3, it can affect the challenge rating. So it's something to consider. Now, I think for this monster, since it's supposed to get harder and harder as we go, but we want to keep the challenge rating kind of where it is, especially since we're going to give it a very specific vulnerability. Um, I don't think that we need to be beholden to that 3 rule there. We can add a whole bunch to it as we go. Question is, should they come up as a batch, or should they be trickled out over time? And I think that really kind of gets based off of what else we want to put in here. Um, let's I know we're at more than 7 now, but let's put another let's put an upgraded resistances or immunities line in here to just kind of hold space for that. Upgraded immunities. Okay, cool. Yeah, so any other ideas? Anything else you think that we might want to work in here as an evolution? Because again, we're not, right now we shouldn't limit ourselves to just 7. We should come up with as many ideas as we think are cool, and then pick the best ones from there. No, no bad ideas at this point. So let's see what else. What else might we do? It's got a swim speed. It could gain the ability to climb. It could gain the like a fly speed. It could gain like spider climb, especially if we're imagining that this last encounter with it is in a it's in a contained area like a cave or a cavern or something along those lines. We might have that. Um, so, hey, yeah, Mr. Max Spider Climb. On the same page, my guy. All right. Well, I love to see it. All right. Giz, I love you. You're making this real difficult. All right. T, B, D. Cool. Yeah, so we can have something like Spider Climb on there, as it, it sort of wriggles up the walls and things like that, especially with kind of the combination of insectoid and amphibian sort of um, elements to it. Um, let's see here. Brooke suggests Dread with the Hunter's Mark thingy. Ooh. Yeah, that's a cool element for especially for the horror theme that we're working on here, where at some point there's a fear effect that comes into play. So we'll say Dread Hunter. Cool. Dread Hunter's Mark. All right. Okay. So what else? So interesting thing that makes me, well, I think it's interesting. Something that we could add to this Dread Hunter's Mark thing is what if, while under the influence of this fear effect, the you know the affected creature, the target creature, has to immediately make has to immediately use their movement to run away from this thing effectively, right? So forces them to turn away from it, forces them to make this roll to possibly forget it. In fact, we could do it almost like a turn undead mechanic, but for uh, but for the player characters, and then just give them a save every round or something like that, where they've got to they got to run. They're terrified. They've got to get out of there. And that could be could be diabolical. Let's see here. Turn undead, but for PCs. And we limit it, so we make it's only applied to whoever they have the hunter's mark on there. Then again, I'm thinking about how that would all play together. If the hunter's mark is applied to somebody who can remember it, they probably have a piece of it, which means they're not likely to forget it. But still, they could make them run away. That's not a bad strategy. Yeah, not quite as diabolical, but it's probably okay. It's probably okay for it to be not as diabolical. All right, so let's see here. What else? Hey, Jonathan Frost, good to see you in the chat, man. Okay. Let's see. What else might we have for this thing? We've got ink fog. We got plenty of poison stuff. We might combine some of these. El Gato del Cur, yes. Meet Gizmo, short for Gizmodius, the machine demon. And we might combine something like Toxic Skin into sort of the advanced poison or vice versa, so that so we kind of get a dual upgrade at that point, right? Where the poison becomes more dangerous and it there's more options to deliver it, and then make something like the Toxic Shroud the third evolution of the poison. Um, we might look at something like that, trying to make sure it's not too big of a leap. Um, let's see what kinds of while we're working on this. Let's see what kinds of resistances and or immunities do we think this thing should have. The fire damage immediately comes to um, uh, yes, it immediately comes to mind there since it's kind of a water creature. Um, the it would poison absolutely because it's got a million poison abilities. It should absolutely be immune to that. And I'll have to think about that. Let me jot those down. So, fire, poison, immediately come to mind. And maybe that's where we start, and upgraded immunities become something else, and we'll see. Let's see, a couple more comments. Brooke says, could our monster track those who have the pieces of it? Ooh, ooh. Jonathan Frost is right. That is a devious idea. I like that. So, let's call that. Let's call that. We'll call it Tireless Hunter for now. And that may be something that we want to work in there. That that's just just a basic effect, something that it has from the very beginning. Or it may be an evolution of the Hunter's Mark deal. Let's see what the Hunter's Mark. Let's look back at the Hunter's Mark spell just to kind of refresh our memories on exactly what it says. Let's see, word for word, so we know exactly what we're dealing with here. So I got D&D Beyond up on the other screen here, per usual. Goodbye, Gizmo, and let's see, Hunter's Mark. What do we get? Away from the camera, my friend. Okay, so Hunter's Mark. You magically mark one creature you can see within core. Spell ends. Extra damage. Okay, also have advantage on wisdom, perception, and survival checks you make to find it. Okay, so that's a basic condition there. We could absolutely do something that enhances that, so that they always know the location of of their marked creature within such and such distance, so many miles. We could do something along those lines. Let's see here. Always no distance. Okay, distance and direction to marked quarry. Okay. Okay. All right. Apologies, everybody here. Having some cat difficulties. Let's see here. Yeah, so I kind of like that there. Always no distance and direction to the marked quarry. And the marked quarry being anybody who has a piece of the monster can be marked. And let's see here. Brooks says could prevent PCs from gathering pieces of the monster at the first encounter. Yeah, it's one of those things that until the characters realize it would work that way, the they're likely to immediately go, okay, well, we're going to collect some pieces just in case, or even if they think that they may think they destroyed the monster and not collect pieces of it, they might try to collect them later. But it's a way to, I don't want to say punish them for it, because you don't want to punish them for good thinking like that, but it's a way to turn the tables. It's a way to make that obvious choice more of a conundrum. I like that. Good thinking there. Let's see here. Mr. Mex says maybe slashing and psychic damage for early versions. Yeah, let's toss that on the possibility list. Slashing and psychic. And I could see, in fact, all of um, all of the creatures made by the wizard having some resistance to psychic damage. The idea being that their innate purpose makes them resistant to that kind of thing, and maybe even makes them resistant to things like or immune to things like the charm condition. Reminds me, we need to put, if we're going to make him resistant to poison or immune to poison, we need to make him immune to the poisoned condition here as well. Yeah, Mr. Rick, so those are good ideas. Those are good ideas. Let's see. We also, if we're talking about this as an evolution, and it's a protective evolution, like we've talked about, that like it's learning, right? Maybe we might think about sorts of damage types that that it's likely to encounter from the characters in the beginning. That being said, I being a water sort of based monster, I think a lot of people are going to guess, lightning. It'll be weak to that, and I don't necessarily want to make it resistant or immune to that, because while that would certainly catch people off guard, I also think it's a little off theme here. But anybody who's played Pokemon knows you should try lightning against water. Yeah, so we don't need to make it vulnerable to that or anything like that. But I'd stay away from maybe the resistance immunity on that one in particular. Let's see. Let's see. This is a pretty good list. Let's maybe start working on fleshing out some of these, and then maybe we'll get some more ideas as we go. So let's say basic poison, and this is poisoned condition, was what we're thinking about there. This ink fog, well, let's finish up the poisons first. Let's say advanced poison is paralyzed condition. Toxic skin is poison spread by touch. Let's see here. Toxic shroud. It was a effectively. Whoa. Okay. Poison aura. Tongue trait paralyzed potentially. Immunity spider climb is pretty obvious. Let's see here. Fog cloud. Darkness. Okay. All right. Or the like, something along those lines. Yeah. So we could build some of that out. Let's see another comment here. We've got Jonathan Frost says, a damage type I see very little since 3.5 is sonic or thunder damage. Is there anything, or is there something there we can leverage here, either resistant, susceptible to it? Don't have a rationale, just an observation. Yeah. Maybe we could. Trying to think of what a rationale for that would be. And we don't necessarily have to have a rationale always. We can just put it in there. Um, but uh, but we could. Well, we could toss it in. Why not? We'll figure out why. We'll figure out why later. We'll say thunder as one of the options there. Um, as I'm kind of noodling around, this is a water-based monster. It's likely to spend some time in the water. We're likely to find it in the water. Water is incompressible. Sound moves faster through water than it does through air. Um, I don't know why you're climbing everything at the moment, Gizmo, but here we are. So there might be something in there on that. I'll noodle that around and come up with something. And if you come up with an idea before I do, let me know. But I like the idea of tossing it in there. Um, yeah, so I wouldn't do radiant or necrotic damage. I can't come up with a good reason why it would be resistant to that or immune to that. Cold again doesn't necessarily make sense. Let's see. Bludgeoning doesn't necessarily make sense. It's got the hard carapace. Piercing damage, maybe piercing. That might be something. And then there's conditions too that we might want to make it immune to or resistant to. It's got a bunch of stabilizing legs and a strong tail, so maybe prone is something that it's resistant to. We said that charm condition potentially. We'll think of more stuff as we move through that. Let's jump back up here to some ideas. So let's jump up here to some other ideas and start fleshing this out. And we'll come up with some other ideas as we go. So Earth says, what if the immunity's resists were dependent on the killing blow? That is a possibility. Yeah, we could do something like okay. Sorry, gears are turning now. Gears are turning as you mentioned that because that is an interesting idea. So instead of just having this laundry list of like a whole bunch of stuff that we're like, it's probably resistant to this, it's probably immune to that, whatever. What if we said, pick that there's some basic immunities, like it's immune to poison and the poison condition. It makes sense. It puts out a whole bunch of poisons, but the other stuff, the initial resistances and immunities that it develops are a block of like, hey, pick 3 from this list based off of the first encounter with the characters. And then we'd kind of do the same thing for the upgraded immunities. Pick 3 more or what have you. That's a really good idea. It makes it very narrative. So let's see. Jonathan Russ says that's a good narrative reasoning for the clone's evolution. Nice job, Orth. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I like that idea a lot. And Mr. Mike says it adapts to each death. Makes sense. Yeah, it would really kind of drive home the idea that it's adapting to them in a way that is a lot easier to write than basing it off a particular party. I like that. So we're going to say pick 3 question mark. And we'll do pick 3 question mark again. I'm pulling 3 out of my, out of the air. No particular reasoning for that other than 3 is usually a good number for things. So we'll have to balance exactly how many it is. But that is a good one. That being said, let's go ahead and new window. I'm all over the place today. All right. Let's see here. Bold. Let's say immunities. Because we know it's going to have some standard immunities. And I think right now those are the Charmed, Poison, and Poisoned. Okay. And then we can evolve from there. Cool. All right, this is starting to fall into place here. Mr. Mech says the party think they know how to kill it. They find it doesn't work the next time they encounter it. Exactly. Which is kind of part of the reason I'm tempted to move. Well, we could go twofold with this. We could say that you pick 3 resistances at the beginning level, and then at the upgrade they become immunities as opposed to resistances. Or we could make them, immunities from the start, and it gains additional immunities, and then maybe 3 for each one isn't the best number. We pick something else on that. Maybe 2. 1 seems too little. So we could kind of go either way on that. I think I'm leaning more towards immunities from the start based off of interactions with the characters that, and then it gains new immunities because that seems more thematic to it. And to your point, Mr. Max, that is a cool little jarring moment where they're like, well, fire killed this thing before. We'll kill with fire again. And oh, now it's not affected by fire at all. Something along those lines. Yeah, I like that. So let's see here. So, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, we got tons of these. So let's start weeding some of these. I think moving Tireless Hunter up to Memory Marked as part of that is a good idea. I think it's a cool, I think it'll be a good kind of universal trait for this thing. It is a predator at its core, right? So let's say while marked, TK monster. Actually, that's not how I want to word this. We're going to say TK monster. Let's see here. Always knows the direction and distance of a marked creature up to, we'll say 3 miles is just a number I'll pull out of the air there. Because it's, don't want it to be forever. We could say that as long as they're on the same plane of existence, but that seems a little OP for this, or a little out of theme. But we do want it there to be a reasonable, sizable distance. So it's not just like, we get 100 feet away and now it can't find me. But the same token, we don't want it to know the exact location because you do want to end up in a situation where you could be playing a little bit of a game of cat and mouse. Or I should say, we want to give ourselves the option of ending up in a situation where we're playing a little bit of cat and mouse with the monster and with the characters. So let's pull that one out here. Dread Hunter. All right, well, okay, so just gonna ignore Gizmo for the moment. All right, so Dread Hunter, I think, is definitely one that we want, or at least I think so. I'm gonna put a little mark on that one, little asterisk, so we know that that's one of the ones we're gonna keep. Because that's a cool evolution of the previous trait, of that Memory Mark trait. And we'll call it Dread Marked. Give it a cooler name. The resistances and immunities and the upgrades make sense. I think we should combine poison skin and or toxic skin and advanced poison. Um, the toxic skin's a cooler name. We're going to go with that. So we're going to say copy, and we're going to say put a comma there. Get rid of that asterisk, so we know that's good. Basic poison we need. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these. So we're looking for maybe 2 more. So the question is ink fog, a toxic shroud, so a poison aura, an upgrade to the tongue lash, or spider climb at the moment. What do you all think? What do you think we should keep? What do you think we should get rid of? Thematically, I think they all work. Let's see. So we got 2 that are step up here. We got 2 that are step up. We've got 1 that's a step up from another ability. So we might have room for something unique, and then something that is a step up from that too. So maybe we have another. Maybe we drop Toxic Shroud and we drop the Tongue Trait and we drop Spider Climb, and we go with Ink Fog, and then we add an evolution to Ink Fog as well, where it starts out as kind of a fog cloud spell, and it then becomes more reminiscent of darkness later on, because those are 2 different mechanics, right? One is partial, partial obscurement. The other one is heavy obscurement, and so that could be a natural progression. So Brooke says, could Ink Shroud evolve into Poison Shroud? Ooh, yeah. And Jonathan Frost echoes that. Start with Ink Fog and upgrade to Toxic Shroud effect. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that makes sense. That makes sense. See, this is why I bounce ideas off you all. You come up with such good ones. Okay. All right, now we can start ordering these. I think. I think basic poison makes sense from the jump, because we've got poison down here in the claw attack. Let's see here. We talked about doing this one this one as being something that appears after the initial encounter with the characters. Let's see here. Jonathan Ross says it could be dark and then poisonous later on. Yeah, I agree. And that's a good idea. To be honest with you, I hadn't really thought about that. Till you guys mentioned that, it makes total sense, because we could either do a darkness effect or a fog cloud effect at the beginning, and then make that toxic later on. Again, another cool little twist on a trait that the characters may have gotten used to, or may have planned for as they eventually run into it. So to that end, maybe we need to make the Ink Fog 3. I hate that it's not doing this. Whatever, we'll figure out the formatting later. We'll make Ink Fog 3. Should we do Dreadmarked as 4 and then run through the other updates there? So maybe do Dreadmarked as 4. Do Toxic Skin as 5. Do the upgrade immunities as 6. And then do Toxic Shroud as 7. Seem like a good progression to you all? Um, bearing in mind that we'll definitely get through up through Dreadmarked then. Yeah, so we'll get our basic poison, we'll get our ink cloud, our ink fog, we'll get our resistance immunities, and we'll get Dreadmarked at a minimum because we know that uh, that those are we know we've got at least 4 encounters with this creature, um, and then uh, yeah, then the other ones would be occurring in sort of that final battle potentially. Um, yeah, so then I'm trying to walk myself through the scenes on this, right? Like so, um, so we're gonna have the first one where they have the encounter, they get basic poison on this thing. Next encounter with it, it's learned it has immunities to some of the abilities that they have, or some of the damage types they've done. The third time now it can shroud itself in this fog of darkness, and then the fourth time they run into it, it has this fear effect with this dread marked ability. Now, um, if they've gotten smart to this point and they have they try to wipe out all of the eggs or whatever they are at once, then they're not going to run into the toxic skin, the upgraded immunities, and then the toxic shroud. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That's rewarding them for good tactics. Whereas if they cut down the others, they're going to get these upgrades like one after the other, right? Like so, they cut down the fourth one, the toxic skin pops up right away. Um, they cut that down. That's going to move into the upgraded immunities. Um, cut that down, goes into the toxic shroud. The toxic shroud is just kind of the ultimate form of this thing. Um, so yeah, I think that kind of works. Um, I think the yeah, because again, trying to think through this thematically, right, or cinematically, right? What's the kind of the arc of the evolution here, and we kind of have a slow build as it's evolving. The characters kind of figure that out, and then we have this climactic scene where we may have evolution after evolution after evolution, just popping up all over the place as the characters realize that eventually they're going to be completely outclassed. Um, so um, yeah. I think I think that works. I think that works. Storytelling wise. Um, let's see here. Jonathan Ross says, I like Dreadmark. Okay, cool. Yeah, I do too. Toxic Skin is on theme. Agreed. Resistance and immunity to poison feels like a natural addition. Um, and and then Jonathan Ross says immunity to prone with all the legs. Yeah, so resistance to immunity does feel like a natural progression. Um, the only thing, well, I should say, there's 2 reasons why I'm not completely sold on that idea, and it's not that there's bad reasoning. It's just these are 2 thoughts that I have. One is, um, again, to the comment where like if you're writing this for yourself, it's not a big deal to be like, hey, it's a progression from resistance to immunity. But if you're writing this for somebody else, um, you know, they may miss when in kind of the haze of running a combat encounter. They may miss that it's no longer resistance, now it's an immunity, and that could nerf some of the creature's abilities. That one's not a huge barrier, but it's something to be aware of, right? The other one is if we go from resistances to immunities, um, then the natural suggestion is that it's immunity, it's a resistances first, and the DM picks 3 damage types based off of whatever the characters used, and then eventually they become immune to those 3. But by the time they become immune to those 3, the characters are going to know that it's resistant to that. They will figure that out in all likelihood, and so they're not going to be using those damages anyway. I mean, again, thinking like players, if they know it's resistant to fire, they're not going to keep trying to use fire on it, right? Um, so that's the other thing that makes me think that maybe they should be immunities from the get go. And maybe it's not three, maybe it develops two immunities to start, and then the upgraded immunities, then it gets three, you know, um, and so on and so forth. Or maybe it's two at each round. It's maybe it's one and then two. Um, Although that seems pretty light, but then again, um, we could make that's just a gut feeling feels light. I don't know that it mechanically would be light. Um, but yeah, so that's really where my hesitation on there to go from resistance to immunities is um, to give it some more surprising immunities than it had before. Um, so we keep the characters on their toes. But let's chew on that one for a minute here. Um, and let's see here. Yeah, immunity to prone with all legs. Yeah, I agree. I like immunity to prone. Um, the prone condition. Um, Although I mean, it's got all the legs. You could potentially, bowl it over or what have you, but I think it would be a lot harder. We could do a mechanic where it has advantage on those checks, and maybe we decide we want to do that. But um, so yeah, so we'll chill on that one too. I could go either way on that one. Let's see here. Orth says, "I know it can happen. What happens if the PCs never figured this out? Will the monster infinitely scale or eventually stop?" Mechanically, I think it needs to stop at seven. Otherwise, we're at a hole where we got to write a million iterations of this. As a DM, you might just give it more immunities, but eventually you're gonna run into a point where it's like it's immune to all damage types. Um, unless they use this very specific vulnerability that we've worked in here, which they may or may not know about, because there's only a few specific places to find that information. Um, so yeah, I would top out at seven personally. I would make it the final evolution. It's make it easier for you to run. The PCs will continue to expect an evolution, so the players will be in their own head and their own, will use their metagaming against them at this point, as they try to figure out what the new thing that it came up with is, even though there isn't any. Um, so yeah, I would stop at seven personally. Um, or it says, like if they get to sixth, seventh, eighth. Yeah. Again, I would, you know, we picked seven arbitrarily here, but if you're going to do this for yourself, I would just pick a number and cap it. It doesn't get any stronger than that. It doesn't get any better than that. Just to keep yourself from going insane trying to run it. Let's see here. Jonathan Frost says, "Did we discuss how the characters learn that destroying all the eggs at once will end the evolutions?" Or its question is a good one. Yeah. So we have not discussed how characters might figure that out. Um, so the that's one of those things that I don't know that I would put the answer in front of the characters. I don't know that I would make that a clear cut. They go and talk to somebody and they figure it out, or they find directions on how to destroy this monster. I don't know that I would do that. What I think I would do instead is in the layer scene when the characters get there, they arrive as the next clone is emerging from the egg, or it's already there, and when they cut it down, the next clone emerges from one of the eggs there, and so the idea is they see this place where. Or they have this moment where they see these clones coming out of the eggs, and it's up to them to put two and two together here, right? So if they know that the clones are coming from the eggs, they physically see that in the situation. Um, you know, it's a lot harder for rational, reasonable players. You can assume that they're going to put two and two together and go, "Oh, the clones come from the eggs. We need to destroy the eggs." If they don't, well, then they haven't solved the side quest, and they just got to come back and do it over again. There's nothing wrong with allowing them that failure. But it is an important point that we need to make sure that that's a clear connection in the layer, and so in the fourth encounter, and so that is a place where we'd want to make sure we work that into the description of the area there. Um, so yeah, let's see here. Jonathan Frost says how Superman takes out Parasite or Doomsday is relevant. Yeah, yeah. Mr. Max, space pile driver. Yeah. Brooks says, I would assume if the PC see them hatching out of the eggs, they would destroy all of them. Yeah, I agree with you. It's a logical jump, and we can assume there's a certain amount of logic we can assume that the players are going to, you know, going to use as they play the game. Because if they don't, well, then they're going to fail stuff, and that's okay. They're allowed to make mistakes and fail through certain things. It doesn't bring the story to an end. In fact, it continues the story in a lot of ways. Um, so yeah, I think we can just assume that as long as we point out to them that, oh yeah, the next clone bursts forth from the egg, that they'll put that together. Cool. So excellent. All right. I know we still have a lot more to do on this monster. The hard stuff, which is the math stuff, will come pretty quickly because we'll use the chart from the DMG 2014 for that. But I think we've got a really good set of evolutions here. I think that we've got some very cool, unique mechanics that this monster has that'll make it, very unlike anything else that you're going to find in any of the major or the mainstream, uh, uh, bestiaries, as you will. So yeah, I'm really excited about what we're doing here. But we are at our time, so let's go ahead and put a pin in it here. Thank you so much for joining me today. As always, I love having these free form conversations with you guys and having this unstructured creative time to really kind of explore ideas and come up with stuff that's truly unique and stuff that we wouldn't run into in a lot of other situations. You guys come up with some incredible ideas and have some really great, perspectives on this. You come up with some very unique ways to look at it. So super helpful. So thank you all. Thank you all for being here. And if you enjoy this sort of content, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. All that stuff helps the channel grow and helps keep these chats really dynamic and yeah, keeps the ideas flowing. So we are. I think we're going to have one this Friday. I will post about that soon, but I think we're going to do a bonus episode on Friday, as we have been doing on our every other Friday. So I'll keep you posted on that one there, but that at the moment is my plan. So we'll run with that. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Good to see you, and I will talk to you next time. And Jonathan Frost, Gizmo would say bye, but he's already fled to the other room. So thanks for hanging out with me, Gizmo. Thanks for saying hi to the cat, everybody. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again.